Hello and welcome to The Next Rung. Today we are joined by Steve. Hello Steve, how are you?
Hi. Very, very well, thank you.
Good. Steve graduated from the University of Chichester in what year was it, Steve?
Well, it's 1988.
Okay, and you did nursing, am I right?
Yeah, mental health nursing.
Mental health nursing,
Yeah,
perfect. So we've also got Sam with us as well.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah, it's exciting. So, just like as a brief introduction, then, can you tell us sort of like what you're currently doing, how you got there, and why you wanted to be where you are, essentially, or if you wanted to be where you are?
So I'm a visiting professor here at Chichester University of Chichester, but my previous role, and I'm still associated with Bournemouth University, I was Dean of the Faculty of Health and Social Sciences.
Oh, okay.
So, which was quite a big faculty. So I trained as a psychiatric nurse originally, and I've gone through a route of clinical work, working in this area, Chichester Bognor. But then I went into academia in 1998. So worked initially at Southampton University as a lecturer, and then through the usual routes of doing a PhD and so on, went on to senior lecturer, and then I worked at King's College in London where I got my professorship, and working in the Florence Nightingale School of Nursing, which is the original school of nursing where Florence worked at St Thomas's Hospital. And then I went from there to become the Dean of Bournemouth University. So I've always had an association with nursing because all of those institutions trained nurses, but I went from delivering nursing to training nurses to be nurses. So that's been my route. And, the academic route has been about not only teaching and education, but research, publishing. So I've written, books and lots of articles and things on various aspects of nursing, but also latterly it was more managing other academics, and so lots of different experiences, which all started University of Chichester.
Amazing, yeah. What do you think the best things are about your job? What do you think of it? Is it quite rewarding, I'd imagine?
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked working with people, so I couldn't, work in a sort of back office, not having contact with people. So from the outset, working as a psychiatric nurse, you learn here. I learned how to relate to people, how to understand people, how to talk to people, listen to people, and all those skills are sort of transferable really into all the other roles that I've undertaken. And I think, one of the things I've really enjoyed is, I suppose you meet people as a psychiatric nurse, you're meeting them, or mental health nurse, the old term was psychiatric nurse. You meet them at difficult times in their lives. And, if you can help them through that and make a difference, that's a really rewarding part of the role. But equally, as a manager in an academic department, if you're seeing students progress in their studies and come out the other end qualified, that's another rewarding aspect. So seeing people move on has been a big motivator for me.
Yeah, fantastic. And as much as there are sort of positive parts of the job, challenges, does it present itself with quite a few? I
think I don't want to go into a long lecture about the NHS.
The laugh was quite ominous, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, working in any big institution presents challenges. I think one of the things I think I quickly realised is you're working in a very political environment as well. Healthcare and education are very sort of politically charged environments. So I think the challenges is, you want to do a good job, but often, resourcing can be challenging, getting the right resources at the right time. And also, latterly, I was managing people, managing performance, managing behaviour, and that was quite, challenging. But, that The challenges are very much offset against the positives. You get much more positive out of the role. Otherwise, I wouldn't have continued in it if it wasn't worthwhile.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So you said that you're you really like the sort of people aspects of it all. How did your degree prepare you for working with people in that respect? And obviously you're visiting professor here now. How is it reflected in current teaching of nursing here? Is it something you're happy with? Is it something you would want to revisit from how you were taught? Or
I think one of the great benefits of most health degrees is that you do clinical placements. So, the 3 years of training are interspersed with placements in hospitals or in the community environments and so on. And so I think for me, and my advice to any student is take advantage of the placements that you're offered, and go out there and use that experience to its fullest, because it's where you learn. Really, you can learn all the theory in the classroom and read about it in books, but actually going out into the real world and learning alongside and observing and taking on, increasing responsibility as you go through the degree, is great. I think that the world's changed a bit. When I did my program here, we were part of the workforce. We got paid to a degree as students. Yeah. Now the students are supernumerary, so they're expected to just it's all part of their education experience. And I think there's pros and cons to that. I suppose when we were part of the workforce, some students felt a little bit exploited because they didn't get the opportunities to learn. But on the other side, you learn how to be part of the workforce, how to be part of a team, timekeeping, all those things, important aspects of on-the-job learning. And I think a little bit of that has been lost going to supernumerary. But on the other hand, being supernumerary allows students to really deeply study and get into their subject, which perhaps we didn't have that opportunity. And so now, in terms of what you were saying about my role here, I'm sort of helping Nita, who's the head of school, with aspects of research, and obviously I come and meet students and talk, encourage. But I think what I'm trying to do is be a bit of a role model to the opportunities, because I think in a lot of healthcare careers you can go into specialise in a clinical career, you can go into education, you can go into leadership, you can go into purely research. I mean, there's great opportunities. So the degree does open lots of doors for people if they want to take it.
Yeah, really good.
Absolutely. So going from back when you were a student, Stephen, obviously you were able to translate what you learnt in the classroom, so like the theoretical stuff, out into placement. But was there anything that you learnt from actually being sort of on the job and then going back to coming and teaching students? Any sort of knowledge that that you applied or that you are able to apply from actually being a nurse to your current role in teaching the students?
Yeah, I think there's lots. I think one of the great things about going in practice as a mental health nurse, you did a lot of supervision and self-awareness. So understanding your own behaviours and motivations and, thoughts, how you think and so on. And so that, I think, mental health nursing requires a lot of resilience and people to understand themselves. So when I come back and talk to students in whatever guise I'm in, it's helping them realise their own strengths, really, and build those. Because I think, particularly in mental health nursing, you don't often see a cure, people sort of transformation overnight. It can take quite a long time. So I think it's helping people see the positives, see the changes that are being made, even if they're very tiny, the small steps forward, and appreciating their own strengths and ability to, even connecting with somebody who's very depressed or, they're very distant, they're very anxious, but having that personal connection, it may not be transformational, but it can be really important to that individual at that time in their lives. So helping students understand what that's, and those sort of things I learned about, I saw people in really difficult times of their lives, very suicidal, very, neglecting themselves, maybe not eating and all those sorts of things that, and it's understanding why people get to those situations in their lives and looking at ways in which you can make changes and help them move forward. And so that's something I try and do with students and help them realise, they have the potential to really make a difference.
Do you think that resilience is something that you need almost as a prerequisite, or is it something that you can teach a student?
I think a bit of both. Yeah. I think you do need a certain capacity. I mean, when we interview students, we always look for people who've had a bit of experience of the, if you like, the clinical coalface, because it can be a bit of a shock, culture shock. Yeah. To come in if you've not had any contact, and that does actually put people off then. Yeah. And so if they've come in with a bit of experience, it helps. But I think you can learn a lot about yourself and how people, why people become unwell and so on, and build self-resilience, self-capacity to because I think, it's very easy to get over-involved if you're not careful. So you have to understand your own boundaries with clients and, what's theirs and what's yours and be able to switch off as well. That's an important part at the end of a
especially for something as demanding and as taxing as psychiatric nursing can probably be. Absolutely.
It's funny you mentioned there in terms of how you're currently helping students make these changes. Is there any or learn things? Is there any particular steps you can identify where particular people had helped you, say, identifying your career path to go and do master's, PhD research, and finding your career path? What kind of help did you receive along the way, and who influenced you?
Lots of mentorship along the way. I think it's an invaluable support. So whether that's somebody who's supervising you on a clinical placement, to somebody who I've had career mentors as well as supported me through my PhD or in career development, and always invaluable. And so I think some of the best mentorship is those people who can both support you but also stretch you.
Yeah, definitely.
And challenge what you may, the direction you're going in or what you're thinking, and get you. I mean, it's an old cliche, but look at things from outside the box and consider other possibilities. And I mean, I don't know if you want me to name specific people, but I've had there's Dame Jill MacLeod-Clark, who's an eminent professor in nursing, and she was my boss at Southampton.
All right.
So not here, but at Southampton. And she had a really major influence on my career in terms of belief in myself, really, and doing a PhD and supporting that. And then,
so were you ever hesitant about doing a PhD, or?
I think because I wanted to. It's a big commitment when I was working as well, so I needed to understand what the value of doing it was for my career, and she helped me. She'd obviously done a PhD some years before me, and gone on to, great things. So, and she put a lot of that down to further study, the masters, and doing a PhD and so on. Because you need PhD. What that gives you is the tools to research. So it's really, even completing a PhD it's the end of the beginning of the journey, because from that you get your basic skills on how to research, and then you develop your research career. So, but I think Jill's influence was, the particular time in my career, crossroads, if you like, making some decisions about which way I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So I think taking the opportunity is, again, for students, the advice I would give is to take the opportunity of good mentorship from where you can get it, really, and insist on it, actually, in your job. I think, having good mentorship in a job is a right. So you should, whether you get it from your manager or whether you have it seeking outside of the organisation, even, you can. There's plenty of options.
Yeah, absolutely. So just you've mentioned that, and then you also said, Steve, to try and encourage students to get the most out of their placements that they possibly can. Is there any other sort of advice that you could give to a student doing a nursing course?
I suppose it's placements are multi-dimensional. You for me anyway, you can go to the place where you're placed by the program team, but it's also using that as a springboard to go off and go and meet other people. So in health, there are big clinical teams involved in patient care. So there's psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers and occupational therapists and all these different people involved, and understanding what they do and what their role is really key. And you can learn some of that in a classroom, but I think going out with people and observing what they're doing. And I mean, I went to the courts to understand how the legal system dealt with the people with mental health problems. I went to prisons and all sorts of things I went to Broadmoor, so just to understand the whole journey of, and I think that's applicable to a lot of degrees, actually. They don't need to be health degrees, but, sandwich courses where people can take a year out and go and spend time in industry, or that's really where you learn. And I think it sets you up, actually, when you come to interview. If you can draw on some real experiences and scenarios, it puts you in a much stronger position.
So you think it's probably much more than gauging an idea of mental health in a range of different environments rather than just patients. Because that's where for mental health patients, and it's the same with patients going through a general hospital. There's a journey that a patient goes through, right from when they go to see their GP through to treatment and rehabilitation and so on. Unfortunately, in mental health, a lot of people come through the criminal justice system, and or may be sectioned under the Mental Health Act and detained and all those sorts of things. So, and I think students really need to understand that, how all those things knit together, so that they can help. Because you're not just working with patients, you're also working with the family, and the family are often as confused as the patient about what's going on. The police have a big contact, a lot of contact with people with mental health problems. So actually, that's one of the things we started to do, is work closer with the police and do teaching sessions with the police, so that they understood, the patient perspective. I suppose in terms of my own research, one of the area that I really pushed, both in clinical practice but also in education, is the notion of having the patient voice at the forefront of teaching. So we used to bring in a lot of people with mental health problems into the classroom to talk about their experiences and things like that. And that brings a much more sort of authentic learning experience. That's a really good way of doing it, isn't it? It's really good for the students. Absolutely.
I mean, I was going to follow up with that by the, so you've been through Chichester's nursing school when it previously existed, and now, now it's back. And talking about those changes you've made, is there anything that now obviously now you're in teaching and you've done the research, how teaching nursing is done effectively? Would you have done anything differently as a student in hindsight? Would you have done anything changed your, I've done more work or dedicated
Yeah.
myself more to particular areas, or?
That's a good question. I mean, I thought the course we had here, and I'm so delighted that the school has opened again here at Chichester, because it's, in my view, long overdue. I think it's a great asset to the university and to Chichester. But the course that was run here was considered very good, and was run by people well respected in the field. So we had, I think, a really good learning experience. I think if I was going to change, hindsight is a great thing.
Oh, yes.
I would have probably taken more advantage of the opportunities that were presented than perhaps I did.
As in like placement opportunities, career opportunities, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think, there were missed opportunities. I think the other thing I think I would have probably done more was spoken out a little bit more. As a student, although we think students may feel like they have no power, but actually they can be very influential when they go out to placements, because they bring new ideas, new thinking.
Haven't been tainted by stagnation.
Indeed. So, and I probably didn't speak out as much as I wish I had done at the time. But you're in an interesting position as a student, because you're dependent on your supervisor to get an assessment, so to pass the placement. So you don't want to upset too many apple carts on the way.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the advantage of us being having the nursing school where it is that it's only over there that's the entrance to St Richard's. So we do have a very close relationship with the hospital, or certainly have built that up at least. So
it's very strong. As I see it. I was involved in an event recently, and there was senior managers from the hospital who spoke, or the trust, who spoke very highly of the school. So,
brilliant.
Yeah, which is very positive. Yeah.
Sounds so far, Steve, like you've had a really successful career. Is there, would you recommend your your degree to anybody that's thinking about coming through Chichester and doing nursing of any type at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I and this, I don't want to blow trumpet, but I would never have had the opportunity to. So I went and, I've spoken in America, in Australia, in China, and I've worked in, lots of different countries with people. And I'd never have had those opportunities without doing this. But you have to push at the doors.
Yeah.
It goes back to mentorship, I think, and people opening doors for you. So don't sit back. You've got to believe in yourself and push forward. And I think once people do their degree here, I think my advice is think of what's the next step.
Yeah.
If you're ambitious, go and do your masters in whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's lots of opportunities around, both here at Chichester, but also other universities. And also think about PhDs. One of the problems is nursing is that people don't tend to do PhDs until they're quite a long way forward in their careers.
Right. Yeah.
So we need more, if you like, newly qualified nurses to do PhDs, to think about doing them. And there are scholarships that students can access once they're qualified, but they don't hear about them, so they need to understand they're out there. Yeah. So it's I understand the motivation for coming into nursing for a lot of people is to work with patients and do clinical work. I understand that. But actually, we need a few more people who are saying, I want to go into research, do my PhD and become a professor or whatever. Yeah. And then you get these opportunities to go around the world and speak. And
fantastic.
It is really good.
It is.
Yeah.
And I suppose going back to what one of the things you said about if I had my time again sort of thing, I think international placements, if there's an opportunity to go, maybe a European placement, we didn't when our course was running, my course was running, but now I think those opportunities exist much more.
Well,
post-pandemic, of course.
Yeah.
It's all much more complicated because there's post-pandemic, post-Erasmus,
Yes.
and now
yes.
there's during, which is, but yes, it is. Yeah, I would definitely agree. Being in the career service, seeing what stuff is available for people to go abroad, it really is it seems like an excellent opportunity.
It is, and an eye-opener. And I think, I know that there were students from Bournemouth going to Turkey where they speak English, a lot of people there. So it makes that transition much easier where you've got an English-speaking, predominantly European country. I think I'd really encourage students to get an international perspective somehow, even if they can't visit. Maybe they can, make a connection.
What's the the common phrase now? Global citizen. Global citizenship. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
it.
And because I think it broaden their understanding of cultural issues in mental health, but also different treatment approaches and so on. So
no, absolutely, that's it's a really insightful idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the country, what's the country you'd go back to in a heartbeat that you've been to, that you've got the opportunity to visit, having been in your line of work?
Gosh, there's quite a few, but I really enjoyed actually China. That's really exciting. Yeah. I mean, despite all the issues that are going on, they were building what they called a health city.
Okay. Wow.
So this is where people with things like dementia who needed a lot of support and observation, but they created these environments where these people could live and work and sort of walk around freely, safely. Yeah. And, if they got lost, then there'd be people there to sort of help them back because of their memory problems. So it was an amazing investment that they were making into sort of future of healthcare for elderly people. Yeah. And that was really, and I'd definitely like to go back there.
Oh,
that sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, no, it does.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things going on in different countries with for mental health issues.
Absolutely. And
we can learn a lot.
No, fantastic. Steve, thank you very much. Yeah. That's really, really good to hear from you, and you've given us more than enough there.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Extremely interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. That was really good to have Steve in.
That was excellent. That was so interesting.
It was good to have somebody speak to us that has come through the uni, that's actually been away, worked for however many years, and come back and is now teaching. Yeah,
I mean, you always hear about how sort of invaluable that is to go away and do breaks in between study as well. But it was also nice to hear someone who's so advanced in their career. He's a professor and he's got a PhD, so he's clearly very knowledgeable, but still talks about the advantage of placements and of practice and stuff. Yeah,
I think that's really useful for any students of any, not necessarily just nursing, but students that are on placements anywhere or about to go on placements. Yeah, to underestimate the value
for prospective students to see where your career can take you as well. Yeah, to go, I've done my bachelor's. Well, then I'll do my master's, then I'll do my PhD, and then I might end up going and talking in wherever country, No,
it's fantastic.
It does really give you that sense that you can basically take it anywhere. Yeah. Which is, it was really nice.
No, it's really good to hear.
I want to go to that health city, though.
In China, yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
A bit dystopian, but
by the sound of it. But it sounds fantastic, and I'd like to speak to him more really about the other countries that he's been to. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and his research actually, quite interested in his research.
No, it was fantastic. Cool, thank you, Sam. It's
pleasure.
Great. Yep. Excellent.